You approach it with incredible reverence. Try to imagine what it must have been like to be on the bridge that night.
Iceberg, right ahead!
Somebody pinch me, I'm dreaming.
Welcome to Blue Peter, James Cameron. Now, James, you've been back deep down underwater, haven't you?
I love being underwater.
You do love it. You can't get enough.
Yep.
But Ghosts of the Abyss is very different from Titanic, isn't it?
Well, it's completely different. It's a documentary and it's in 3D.
It's the perfect film to be in 3D because I know it sounds cliche, but you do actually feel like you're in there at times and just sort of diving underwater.
That's right, yep.
The wreck is 2.5 miles down under the water, so obviously it's pretty dark down there.
It's completely black, no sunlight, so you've got to bring lights, and we dive with submersibles, and then we built these special robotic vehicles that we could fly inside the wreck, because nobody had to look inside.
They were Elwood and Jake, weren't they?
Jake and Elwood, the Blues Brothers.
Yeah, and as a viewer, you actually get to grow attached to these robots. It's very bizarre.
I was pretty attached to them, but that's maybe because they were $2 million a piece, or $1 million a piece.
That would kind of swing things
Yeah,
a
exactly.
bit, wouldn't it?
Ka-ching.
But it wasn't all straightforward. It wasn't plain sailing. Sorry about the cliche, but because as well as the dangers on the seabed, getting back on board was a very risky business. In the movie Titanic, we saw a recreation of the ship's interior, but what I want to know is how does it actually compare to the real thing? How could you...
It was much more fantastic inside than we could have imagined. The state of preservation, you saw so many beautiful windows and
Yeah,
again, look at the
chandeliers.
chandelier, you see the gold
It's
still
amazing.
there, still gold plated,
Yeah.
so it was amazing.
So, were there times when you had to just paint it in from your head, or could you actually see all the sort of real detail?
Well, I knew the ship pretty well because I'd walked around the set when we did the movie.
Yeah.
So here I was flying this little vehicle around through the real ship. Of course, we didn't have the budget to make a set of Titanic this time, so we just used the real Titanic.
Now, obviously, it is a wreck. It's not a tourist site, and over 1,500 people died down there. How did you sort of keep sensitive to that and respect that?
Well, we don't take anything from the wreck, so we're not salvaging, and we're just taking images, and we're trying to keep the memory alive. And a lot of people ask me if you see bones or skeletons, that sort of thing. You don't, because they've all dissolved away into the sea. So it's just a little bit like a memorial site, and we treat it that way, very reverentially.
Yeah. I mean, did you find it quite eerie? Because it is just a sort of amazing sight that you don't really expect to see in your lifetime.
Yeah, it's like a haunted house. It's like
Yeah.
a strange, eerie, haunted house under the water, like a mansion, like an old Gothic mansion.
Absolutely, but it's so famous and well known, which just sort of adds to the whole effect.
Right, well, it's the people. It's the stories of the people that were on the ship. And part of what we do with this film is we tell those stories, the real stories, not the fictional story of Jack
Yeah.
and Rose,
Yeah.
but the real stories of what these people went through and who they were.
Absolutely. Well, the wreck is sort of a bit preserved at the moment, but it looks like it's deteriorating slowly. How long has it got left?
It's hard to say. I mean, it's broken down. We were there in '95 when we were making the movie, and then we went back in 2001, and it started to sort of crumble a bit. So who knows, 30 years, 50 years, but that's why we want to photograph it now. That's why we made this film.
Yeah, it's an amazing document, really,
Yeah,
isn't
exactly.
it? Now, one of the rooms that the team were able to explore belonged to a survivor called Edith Russell. Edith was a first-class passenger aboard the Titanic. On April the 14th, 1912, as the ship began to sink, Edith was too frightened to jump into lifeboat 11. However, after her lucky toy pig was thrown in, this gave her the courage to follow, and both Edith and her pig survived. And that pig is right here in the studio today. It's actually a musical box and was Edith's lucky mascot following her escape from a car crash. It looks very delicate looking. It's lost some of its hair around there.
Apparently you can crank the tail, and that's how you wind the music box,
Really?
but I don't think we should probably
I think
do
it's
that.
so delicate.
It's made it this far.
We should leave it, yeah. It's
Exactly.
done this good. We don't want to spoil it now.
Right.
And over here, these are the satin slippers and the knitted cap that belong to Edith. I mean, it's amazing the condition that they're in. You could just imagine seeing them in a shop almost today.
Almost a century old.
I know, and they've been on the Titanic. It's just Oh, unbelievable. And if you come over here, this is a telegram that was sent once Edith had been found and picked up from the lifeboat by Carpathia. Now, these treasures and many more mementos donated by survivors of the Titanic disaster will be on display at the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich from tomorrow. Wow. Now, James, now that you've completed this project, what's next?
I'm going to be making a movie, kind of like my big effects and action movies.
Like Titanic.
Like Titanic, but in 3D.
In 3D?
Yeah, I used the same cameras that we used for this film, for the documentary film.
Can you spill any beans about it? Is it a big Hollywood blockbuster action for you?
Yeah, it's going to be really cool.
Is it?
That's all I can tell you.
Anything more than that? That's not saying much. Come on.
You get the scoop here on Blue Peter.
We've given you a badge and everything.
I've got the coveted badge.
Yeah, just a little inkling. What's it about?
Little inkling. It's a science fiction film.
Sci-fi. Okay, well, thank you very much for telling us that, and thank you for coming in to tell the Blue Peter viewers all about the film.
It was a great pleasure.
Thank you. Now, Ghosts of the Abyss is released on Wednesday at IMAX cinemas across the UK, and I highly recommend it. Wow.